Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I'm back today with another tier list video, but this time around I'll be ranking every weapon in Hyperscape. The purpose of this video is to give you guys a clear idea of which weapon to pick up and which ones to avoid. To put it simple, S tier weapons are the best and F tier weapons are the worst, but I'll give you guys a better description when we get to it. Presently there are 11 weapons in the game and each one plays a different role. These roles are close range, mid-range or long range, and just like hacks, all weapons can be upgraded up to 4 times by fusing duplicates together. Like I've mentioned previously, this list is subjective and purely based on my opinions, so I'm open to changing my mind and I love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Leave a like or a dislike if you want and subscribe if you are new here. Now then, let's get you the best arsenal possible. F tier. These weapons are underpowered and should be neglected no matter the fusion level. In this category, we've got the Dragonfly, a new semi-auto rifle introduced at the start of Season 1. This rifle comes with a magnified scope and is meant for medium to long range engagements. The suppressor on the end keeps you from being heard and lets you catch players off guard. Sounds impressive, right? Yet in reality it's far from it. The Dragonfly is outclassed by almost all weapons in its intended range and is surprisingly awkward to use. One of its biggest issues is visual recoil. The sights kick up after each shot, but the weapon doesn't actually have any recoil. This visual representation makes you think you have to pull down to compensate, but when you do, you're actually taking your aim off target. So the next time you decide to pick up a Dragonfly, remember not to pull down unless the player is moving downwards. Secondly, the damage output is average at best and somewhat resembles a semi-auto Ripper. Having said all of that, its stealth qualities are still great for staying under the radar and the hipfire spread is decent. The potential is still there and with a few tweaks it can definitely compete with the top tier weapons. If I were to make any changes to it, I'd reduce the bullets needed to kill by 1 and tone down the visual recoil. D tier. These weapons are below par and off meta. For this category I've chosen the D-Tap as my D tier weapon. This pistol has a built-in state-of-the-art aimbot, I'm not kidding. You can be off target and your bullets will still curve on target as long as the player is within the square. However, the downfall of this weapon is due to its stats. A fully fused D-Tap requires you to land 23 shots and 24 when it's unfused. With a clip size of 23 maximum, you'd be hard pressed to get the job done within a single magazine. So you'd have to heavily rely on your opponents to be really bad or AFK to win a 1 versus 1. Having said that, it's not totally unviable with the right strategy. It's best used when combined with a powerful weapon like a Skybreaker to do the majority of the damage and then follow up with your D-Tap when the player is low on HP. Additionally, the high hit rate is really useful for airborne targets and especially during the low gravity event when everyone is moving really slow. Plus you can hold down the trigger to reach the maximum RPM consistently, which always guarantees the best possible time to kill. And as a tip, aiming down the sight extends the lock-on range, so always aim down sight for distant targets. Overall, I feel the D-Tap has its own unique role and I don't think it needs a buff or any rework. The next weapon in this category is the Salvo. This grenade launcher used to be really powerful during the beta, dare I say borderline broken. But after a few tweaks, the Salvo has now been regulated strictly for indoor use. These grenades can be bounced off walls and floors to catch enemies off guard. So if your opponents are backed against a wall or inside a small building, you'll definitely find it difficult to miss and enemies will find it impossible to dodge. However, when you're outdoors, the Salvo effectiveness quickly evaporates. Having to land 5 shots on moving targets can be hard to say the least and made all the more difficult without its knockback effect. So overall it's a very situational weapon and because players spend most of their time outside of buildings, it's not the best weapon to carry. I've been fortunate enough to play against all versions of the Salvo and I think this one is the most balanced version yet. So I'd be surprised if they make further changes. C tier. These weapons are average and are tailor-made for the average Joe. For this category I've chosen the Skybreaker. This is an energy rocket launcher capable of causing large amounts of damage in one go. The blast radius is very forgiving and can knock players back as well as cause environmental damage. For those reasons I've listed, the Skybreaker doesn't require a lot of skill to master and can be used effectively by almost anyone. It's the perfect weapon for third partying and makes follow-ups feel really effortless. However, there are a few downsides. The Skybreaker does less than half of its maximum damage within 20 meters and can be painful to use without a mobility hack. So if you haven't got anything to launch yourself up in the air with, then you'll struggle to make full use of it. If I had to make any changes to it, I would add a beefy audible sound when fired so that players can hear it coming. At the moment, it seems like the majority of the players are unaware of the threat and can leave many frustrated. Other than that, it's in a great place right now. The other weapon in this category is the Komodo, another grenade launcher, but this one is more akin to the Skybreaker. The fast rate of fire makes it very spammable and the projectiles travel much faster than its counterparts. You can even snipe with it from a distance because of its huge area of effect, especially if they are near an object or a wall. However, just like the Skybreaker, it won't deal max damage inside of 15 meters, so if you happen to value your life, don't bother using it indoors or in confined spaces. Also, there's no need to aim down sight unless you need the extra magnifications for distant targets. Overall, the Komodo is clearly far weaker than its predecessor, but still has its moments and remains effective when used wisely. Going forward, I don't think the Komodo needs further tweaking and is in a good place right now. B tier. These weapons are great but imperfect. In this category we have the Mammoth, the only shotgun in Hyperscape, and like every other shotgun in every other game, closing the gap is key. Having a pump action shotgun can be great when you're near enough, but not so great when you aren't. The fully fused version can one shot anyone in close range and all the fusions below it perform identically. So 2 shots or more to get the job done on average, but that's easier said than done. For some reason the Mammoth can be really inconsistent at times, and I'm not too sure if it's linked to the spread pattern or the hitboxes. Either or, pellets seem to narrowly miss my enemies and often leave me open to attack. Luckily enough though, it comes with plenty of rounds, so if you haven't got the greatest of aim, I highly recommend it. Overall, it's a great weapon for close quarters, whether that be early or late game, you really can't go wrong. Apart from buffing the spread to make it feel more consistent, I wouldn't really change anything about it. Next up we have the Protocol, the only sniper in the game and is statistically the most powerful weapon in Hyperscape. A fully fused Protocol lets you one-shot players with a single headshot, and with hit scan registration it's easy to tell why it's so polarizing. Precise players can absolutely own with it and is well complemented with a close range weapon. Also, the Protocol is really useful for scanning the map and scouting enemies from a distance. Having said that, a large magnified scope does come with its fair share of problems. Close quarter engagements should be avoided at all times, and if your secondary isn't a close range weapon, you're more than likely going to get sent back to the lobby. The hipfire accuracy is far from great as well, and controller players will find it a little bit less effective than keyboard and mouse players. Nevertheless, players on the receiving end will always feel frustrated no matter the platform. If I could make any changes to the Protocol, I would limit the one-shot range to 100 meters or so, and perhaps add scope glint so that snipers who are impossible to see can be identified when they become a threat. A tier. These weapons are exceptionally good and dictate the meta. The first weapon in this category is the Ripper. This assault rifle can fire 330 rounds per minute and cause huge amounts of damage. The hipfire is exceptionally accurate and is best used for medium range engagements, but can be devastating from all ranges. For me, the most appealing thing about the Ripper is the lack of recoil. You can literally laser stationary targets from nearly anywhere on the map. Also, I wasn't aware of this until yesterday, but you can actually shoot before the reload animation ends. This speeds up the reload time considerably and lets you get back into action faster than intended. Plus, the ammo count is adequate enough for even the worst of aimers and doesn't punish you much for missing your shots. Overall, the Ripper is a true jack of all trades and should be part of your arsenal, especially the fully fused version. I would prioritize the Ripper over any unfused weapon, and I don't think it needs further tweaking. Next up we have the Riot 1. This pistol is my favourite gun in the game at the moment and very much reminds me of the Wingman. Both are extremely satisfying to use and come with their own very cool animations. In terms of damage, the Riot 1 packs a huge punch and can 3-shot enemies if you aim to the head. The level 1 Riot is the only version not capable of doing so, but fortunately all fusions share the same magazine size, so there's a few more bullets to help you out. Also, the hipfire is incredibly accurate and almost, if not as good as aiming down sights. So there's no reason for you to be aiming down sight 99% of the time. Even then, the added magnification is minor at best, and if anything, it might actually block your view and slightly hinder your tracking. Overall, the Riot 1 is best used as a budget DMR and goes well with any type of close quarter weapon. It's essentially a high risk, high reward weapon and rewards accuracy handsomely. But on the flip side, it can be challenging to use, especially for new players. Does it need any tweaking? Definitely not. Ubisoft, don't touch my favourite weapon, please. Moving on, the last weapon in this category is the Hexfire. If I told you this gun is a shadow of its former self, you probably wouldn't believe me, and rightly so. Yet here we are 3 nerfs later and it's still somewhat of a powerhouse and a force to be reckoned with, especially on console. This minigun has a supersized magazine and can carry up to 270 rounds. Plenty more than you'll ever need, and with its rapid rate of fire it can rain down bullets for days. Forget about lining up your shots, just pray and spray to victory. The minigun is best used for close to medium range engagements and still has insane hipfire accuracy. To be honest, the spread nerf is hardly noticeable. The only downside I can think of is the bulkiness of the weapon. It covers the lower portion of your screen and more so when aiming down sight. Overall, the Hexfire is a fantastic choice for new and experienced players alike, and it comes handy in squads where you're more than likely to engage with multiple enemies at the same time. Presently, I don't think the Hexfire needs a nerf, but I do recognise that its excessive use on console could negatively affect player experience. It's a really tough one, and I'm hoping the issue resolves itself when players start to try out different weapons. And finally, S tier. These weapons are sublime and almost overpowered. For this category, I've chosen the one and only Harpy. This SMG was the most used gun during the beta, and the stats simply don't lie. It's the fastest firing weapon in Hyperscape, which also means it's the fastest time to kill weapon. The Harpy performs exceptionally well in close quarters and can easily go head to head with any other weapon in the game. Only a max fuse protocol or Mammoth is capable of stopping the Harpy in its tracks, but that happens rarely. One of the biggest downsides to the Harpy is its small magazine size. This requires you to be really precise, and wasted bullets don't go unpunished. For this reason alone, new players may struggle to use it, but to compensate, the Harpy does have the second fastest reload time in the entire game. 2 seconds to be exact, and that's not bad at all. The only other downside I can think of is range. The Harpy comes with a fair amount of recoil and isn't so great past 30 meters or so it's best paired with a medium to long range weapon like a Riot 1 for the ultimate loadout. If you haven't tried out the Harpy yet, I highly recommend it, and hopefully it won't get any further nerfs. So that's about it for today, guys. I hope I've given you more insight on the weapons and where they all fit. If you think I've misplaced any of the weapons in the game, then feel free to share your recommendations in the comments down below. As usual, leave a rating, subscribe for more of the same content, and I'll see you later. Take care.